Hey, Dolphins fans. Welcome to another episode of On the FinSide here with Kat and Paul. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Spreaker, iTunes, YouTube, iHeartRadio, and Spotify. Check out our merch store on the FinSide.threadless.com. I'm Brian Cat NFL, and Paul is fanatic_pick on Twitter. We made it, Paul. It's week one of the regular season. The Miami Dolphins go up to New England this weekend to battle the New England Patriots. They're 6.5-point underdogs. I swear it seems like 3 years ago now, the Dolphins beat the Patriots in week 17 of last year. A lot has happened since then, that's for sure.
It has. And before we even get to Sunday, tonight we've got a game to root for as well. We've got to root for the Chiefs tonight to beat the crap out of the Texans like we do every week. So that first round draft pick next year is nice and high for us.
Yeah, I hope it's not as stressful as last year with hoping the Steelers were going to lose every week, because Steelers would get to the last minute, play a terrible game, and somehow end up winning 20-17. And that was the difference between picking 17th and picking 10th in this past NFL draft. So, but we're still looking at draft position. We're still looking for the Dolphins to be successful here this year. But Paul, it's a lot different this year now with the Patriots and the Dolphins, at least at first. And to put that in perspective, the last time the New England Patriots lost 3 games in a row was October 2002. I did the math before, and it has been 6,529 days since the Patriots lost 3 games in a row. So if you win the last game of the year against the Patriots last year, they also then go and lose their first game in the playoffs, and then the Dolphins come back to the same house and beat them in week 1, things might change in the AFC East.
Yeah, that'd be an exciting way to kick off the year. I know we're going to do our predictions later on, so I won't spoil that for our listeners here. But you know what? It's time. Cam Newton's a more physically talented quarterback than Tom Brady, but Tom Brady's a lot more cerebral quarterback than Cam Newton. So 6 of one, a half dozen of the other. Bill Belichick's still in charge, but Cam Newton does have his tendency to throw his little tantrums and get hurt. So I'm looking forward to this matchup. I think we've got a hell of a secondary. Cam does not have a receiving core. The strength of that team is going to be their running game on offense, and they are gutted a little bit on defense with some of their opt-outs.
I'm glad you said that, because I was very much of the opinion last year that, yeah, Tom Brady did not elevate that team around him. It was a very average to below average offense in New England for the year, even though they won 12 games. But, even though they switched the quarterback, the wide receivers and the tight end, the rest of the supporting cast for the Patriots is relatively the same. I mean, Sony Michel is going to line up at running back. They're going to have James White, a very talented third down back. At wide receiver, though, you've got Julian Edelman, you've got N'Keal Harry, and not much after that, and really no tight end to speak of other than third-round pick Devin Asiasi. So what I had said earlier in this week and what I had tweeted out is there is no excuse, even in week 1, for the Dolphins with what they've spent at defensive back. Xavier Howard, Byron Jones, Eric Rowe, Bobby McCain, and then they draft Noah Igbenogany and Brandon Jones in the first 3 rounds. No excuse for them not to be able to get the better of the Patriots wide receivers here.
Yeah, and I do expect to see a lot of 5 DB sets in this game until they turn around and force the Patriots to run the ball and give Cam Newton some fits early on. If you can get in his head early, there's not much he can do at that point in time. He starts making a lot of mistakes.
And speaking of dates and times that players were successful, the last touchdown that Cam Newton threw was almost 2 years ago. I mean, it was November 4th, 2018. In his last 7 games, he was 0-7 going back to the Carolina Panthers. So this is somebody in Cam Newton that like you said, is incredibly physically talented. But this isn't 2015 Cam Newton either right now. I mean, this is somebody that has a lot of question marks and not a great supporting cast or a great offensive line to start the season.
Yeah, no, and I'm not impressed. It's their running game scares me the most, and that includes Cam Newton. But I think Ryan Flores knows what he's doing here, and given the linebacker core that's been revamped, given the edge rushers that have been revamped, I think this defense is going to give Cam fits, and that's going to be a huge deciding factor in this game.
Yeah, and one matchup to watch out for that I think the Dolphins could have a big advantage is Emmanuel Agba going up against Jermaine Illuminor. Jermaine Illuminor he was traded for a late round pick last year from the Baltimore Ravens. He's going to play right tackle. He's going to take over from Marcus Cannon, a very talented player that's going to sit out the year. And Agba, 6'5", 270 pounds, was in the middle of a breakout year with the Chiefs before he went out for the year. So if they can get pressure on him, like you said there, Paul, it's going to keep Cam Newton inside the pocket.
Yeah, and I'm excited actually for two other guys as well, not just Lawson and Agba, but also Strobridge and Van Ginkel. I think they're going to see a little more action than people expect this weekend. They're two guys that I'm really high on going into this season. And we may see Strobridge out there at the same time as Agba and Lawson. And see Strobridge rushing up the middle while Lawson and Agba are coming off the edge. And I think it's going to be intriguing to watch Miami actually have a pass rush this year, because last year it was non-existent outside of Beagle.
Yeah, that's for sure. Shaq Lawson, Emmanuel Agba, and yeah, like you said, Van Ginkel is expected to take over that Vince Beagle type of role. It'll be fascinating to see in switching from Patrick Graham to Josh Boyer as the defensive coordinator, what kind of changes that we can expect here going forward. On the offensive side of the ball, Paul, Ryan Fitzpatrick last year in his final 5 games of the season completed almost 62% of his passes, 1,600 yards, 10 touchdowns, 3 interceptions on an absolute tear there in the last 5 games. He's a little unpredictable from one season to the next, from one game to the next. And a big part of what happened in week 17 last year was Devontae Parker. Devontae Parker catches 8 passes, 137 yards against perennial All-Pro and defending player of the year, Stephon Gilmore. Stephon Gilmore, I got to tell you, I'm fearful that he is going to come back very, very motivated against Devontae Parker, and I'm interested to see how that matchup goes.
Oh, I hope that New England throws half their secondary at Devontae Parker, not just Steph Gilmore, give him some safety help over the top, and let Preston Williams start feasting from the other side of the field. And then that is going to open up everything underneath for guys like Lynn Bowden if he gets out there, guys like Jakeem Grant, guys like Malcolm Perry, Matt Breida coming out of the backfield. If they overcommit to these twin towers on the outside, you've got Mike Gesicki as well running up the seam. There is a lot of damage that can be done if they overcommit, and if they shut down Parker and what they'd have to commit to do so, they're going to be hurting somewhere else that Miami can expose.
Yeah, and such a big reason for the Dolphins' success last year against the Patriots in that game is how well Gesicki and Devontae Parker played in those contested catch situations. They didn't have Preston Williams late last year, and they're going to have him back in this game, and reports out of camp have been very encouraging. It should be a fascinating matchup with him against Jason McCourty, the brother of Devin McCourty, the free safety. So, yeah, I think these matchups on both sides of the ball favor the Dolphins. If I were the Patriots, what I would be thinking is I'm not going to put Devontae Parker and Mike Gesicki and Preston Williams in man-to-man one-on-one coverage like they did last year. Because if that's the case, Fitzpatrick's greatest strength is quickly identifying that one-on-one coverage and putting the ball up for grabs in those contested catch situations. So if I know Bill Belichick, I think we're going to see a little bit more zone defense from him as opposed to the man-to-man over the top.
Yeah, and that might be the case. And in which case, I think that between Gesicki, Williams, and Parker, somebody's going to beat their man. And given that fact, you're going to see New England make halftime adjustments, probably kick back into man and see if they can stop it from there. And once that happens, I see Jakeem Grant, I see Malcolm Perry, I see Matt Breida, I see Lynn Bowden, I see all those guys just destroying underneath. Forgotten man Durham Smythe, who's supposedly improved his receiving this offseason as well.
Yeah, what do you think about that? Durham Smythe, it was a little bit of a surprise to some people that when the depth chart was released, he was the starting tight end. Did that surprise you at all?
Not really. I expect he's probably going to be in helping these rookies out a little bit with the blocking early on in the season, more so. And like we said before, Gesicki is a big slot in a Chan Gailey offense. He's not your traditional tight end. Yes, he's improved his blocking a little bit, but he's basically a guy that up until now has only blocked people on Twitter. So given that fact, I'm not surprised to see Smythe out there helping guys like Austin Jackson.
Yeah, I think he's got some added benefit helping those younger tackles, like you said. And also too, even though he's listed as the starter, keep in mind too, back when Chan Gailey was the Dolphins offense coordinator 20 years ago, Hunter Goodwin was the starting tight end, and he only played 15, 20 snaps a game as that blocker. You look at the Baltimore Ravens, Mark Andrews is a near 1,000-yard tight end, but you look at the depth chart, Nick Boyle is listed as the starter because they play on earlier downs. So not very alarming, but it's also encouraging to hear what we're hearing about Durham Smythe too, because when the Dolphins drafted him out of Notre Dame as a 4th-round pick, 6'5", 255, 260, ran in the mid 4.5s. He was more of a projection, a tools type of guy. And now here we are 3 years later, and it kind of is consistent with that arc of a project player, where now here we are in his 3rd year, and maybe the light's clicking on a little bit for him.
I think it might be. I'm hopeful. I mean, there's a few guys that I'm hoping the light clicks on for. Given the fact, I'm going to kick it over a little bit. Given the fact that he won a starting role and a captain spot, I'm going to go over to Jesse Davis a little bit and basically tell you, I hope that he's improved his play at that right tackle spot this year. I was really hoping we'd see Robert Hunt. I was very, very shocked to see Jesse Davis get listed as a captain for this team. And we need Jesse Davis to step up his game a little bit. He is probably one of the best flex players behind that offensive line as a backup. But as a starter, I'm a little bit nervous about that one. And that also elevates the need for Smythe to be in the game.
Yeah, and a few of the other captains in this are going to be Kyle Van Noy, Landon Roberts, and Ted Karras, and that's certainly not a coincidence. And when I was watching a press conference with Brian Flores, and when he was asked about it, he definitely dodged the question and kind of gave a little smirk too. So it's clear what they're trying to do on that as far as the mind games going on early on. So Paul, first game of the year, and it's a big one too. I mean, every game's big, but if the Dolphins can win this game, you look at the next two, you've got the Bills at home next week. You've got the Jaguars on Thursday Night Football the week after. If you can go down to New England and win week one, might be looking at a 2-1 or 3-0 start.
Yeah, I know. I did a guest spot where I did a breakout game by game. I had Miami going to a 2-1 start with their wins coming against New England and Jacksonville, dropping a loss to the Bills. Unfortunately, I think the Bills are a little more put together at this point than any of the other two teams there, as well as Miami. Miami's going to be still on an upswing early in the season. For the Pats, they've got Cam Newton in there learning a new offense. They've lost some captains along their defense, and they're going to have a learning curve, and they're learning a new offense without Brady. So the Pats are a team that needs some development time, and the Jags are just terrible overall, even though they've got some talented players. So I think Miami could jump out to that 2-1 start here, potentially 3-0, which would be exciting for us here doing this show and as fans.
You bet. And it would be, yeah. And this is that's why this one is so important. And in addition to getting off to a fast start, you take down New England twice there, in a span of 9 or 10 months in New England. Not a lot of teams can say that they've done that, and it could continue to lead to leaning on the Patriots in overtaking the AFC East here. So also, Paul, looking at a few players, we talked about how much more difficult it is this year to predict who the Dolphins inactives are going to be. And the rules have changed a little bit, and not to go down too far of a rabbit hole, but this year, instead of having 46 players on the active game day roster, the Dolphins can have 48, as long as one of them, as long as they have 8 offensive linemen. So really, as it appears, the Dolphins are going to have 5 inactives from their normal 53. We won't pay any attention to the 2 guys who will be promoted here on Saturday to make it 55. So overall, looking at the active roster, there should be 5 inactives. So looking at the Dolphins roster now with so few injuries and so much more depth on the team, what 5 players do you think are going to be inactive?
First and foremost, Panky. I like Panky. I think he's a developmental talent that happened to just squeak onto the roster if he even makes it to game day Sunday. I'm optimistic, but we'll see. I think Laird, as the 4th running back right now, is going to be inactive for this game, even though I like his skill set as a 3rd down back. We've got Jordan Howard, we've got Matt Breida, and we've got Myles Gaskin. Calvin Munson, sorry, buddy. He did well down the stretch last year, but Miami has a glut at the linebacker position. Chandler Cox, I'm not sold on him as a fullback. I just think situationally they can patchwork people in that moment. And then I went with Mac Hollins. I know not everybody's going to be a fan of that. To me, he just barely made the roster. With guys like Lynn Bowden Jr., who I did think about having, or Bowden Jr., who I did think about having inactive, guys like Malcolm Perry, I think Flores is going to want to throw the kitchen sink at New England and whoop on them again here in this game. And to do that, I think he's going to throw some creative things out there because no one knows truly what to expect from this Chan-Gailey offense. And I think they're going to be heading towards that position this bit. Bowden's a guy I think they're excited about and want to, even though he doesn't have the full playbook down, I'm sure, given the fact that he was recently acquired, I think they're going to want to just have a handful of situational plays they want to see him in. And he had some special teams flexibility too on top of that.
See, that's interesting because I have 5 completely different players than the ones you listed here. So and that's part of the reason I asked that, because I think the 5 players that you listed might be the 5 players at the most bottom of the roster. But I also think that them being on the roster is the reason why they're going to dress for the game, because they're not potential guys. So if you're not keeping them on the roster based on potential and long-term ability, and you're not dressing them, then why are you keeping them on the roster at all? So you've got Patrick Laird, Chandler Cox, Cody Panky, Calvin Munson, and Mac Hollins as your inactives. I've got 4 rookies, it being the inactives: Robert Hunt, Jason Strobridge, Lynn Bowden, Malcolm Perry as my 4 inactives, and then tight end Adam Shaheen. And the reason being, very simply, that 4 of these guys are rookies. It's a weird type of offseason. And when it comes to Robert Hunt, I think he would be the 9th guy off the bench right now. I think you're keeping Panky so that he can back up the right tackle spot. They don't feel comfortable with Robert Hunt doing that at this point. Bowden's still learning the offense. Malcolm Perry barely makes the roster and is not going to be as much of a special teams gunner as Mac Hollins. Adam Shaheen, also still a project at this point. So I think Chandler Cox gets the game day start over him. But anyway, I'm fascinated to track this and see how this goes.
So the one I'm going to probably, most of those I'm not even going to be in my feels about, but I'd be a little surprised about Strobridge, given the flexibility along that D line, given the reports out of camp about how well he's done. The other ones I can completely see it. Panky or Hunt, I totally get, and I think you've got valid reasons for the others. It's just Strobridge would be a surprise to me. Even with the guys that I had just on the cusp, I never had Strobridge on that even just on the cusp list as far as being inactive this week. But it should be.
We'll see, because it's harder to predict this year. That's for sure. So Paul, I'll start with my prediction first on this game and what I think is going to happen. I don't think we're going to see quite the I'm not going to say shootout, but I think this is going to be a low scoring type of game. And the reason I say that is because Bill Belichick, Stephon Gilmore, and the Patriots defense have had a whole offseason to think about how that matchup went in week 17. They lose to the Dolphins. They lose the bye. And they're not the same team in the first round of the playoffs. They lose to Ryan Tannehill and the Tennessee Titans in the first week of the playoffs. So I see a lot of interceptions here from Ryan Fitzpatrick if I'm looking at the crystal ball. I think Cam Newton and the rest of the Patriots offense is going to be overwhelmed by the Dolphins defense, but I have the Patriots squeaking this game out 16-13.
For me, watching Cam Newton the last few years, he's been a guy that gets confused when he knows the offense. And this is a brand new offense he hasn't been in game situations with. And Miami's got a pretty good secondary out there at this point, a much better pass rush than they've had in a few years now. I look at that. I see a team that's going to give Cam Newton fits, given the fact that he's already had some opt-outs along his starting line. And Miami's got that pass rush both on the inside and the outside. I don't see this being a game that goes very well for the Pats. I think they will get on the board, but I think Miami just has them outclassed in a lot of areas, and I don't feel like anybody knows what Miami's coming out with in this game, which I think is great. I think the positionless defense, given the fact that Cam doesn't know the offense as well as we think anyway, I think Miami pulls this one out 27-14. I'm going to go with, and I think the game later in the year would be closer if Cam Newton's still healthy at that point in time.
Well, if that happens, we'll certainly have a great show on Sunday night, and we're going to be on here live 9:30 Central Time, 10:30 Eastern Time. At least that's the plan right now, to recap the game and talk and give our individual grades as well. We're going to try to do more and more of these YouTube types of broadcasts. Be sure to check out as well our interview with Derek Havens from patsfans.com. He gave some great insight on the New England Patriots roster view from the other sideline there. You can follow Paul at fanatic_pick. I'm Brian Cat NFL. You can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Spreaker, iTunes, YouTube, iHeartRadio, and on Spotify. And if it's not on the right side and it's not on the left side, it is on the FinSide. Solo D, take us home. Or you know what I mean.